It appears we have trouble brewing in the Big Ten Conference. That's right, the almighty Big Ten. There appears to be major disagreements between two of their bigger brands versus the rest of the brands, the rest of the schools in that league. We're going to talk about that in this episode of Kuz's Corner, but more importantly, we're going to talk about what that could mean if these two schools are not able to reconcile their differences with the rest of the league. What would it mean for the conference my team is in, the Big 12? What would it mean for the Big 12? Would it be good or bad for that league? Let's talk about it right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Kuz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports news and analysis, primarily surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and occasionally the Big 12. An article by Ross Dellenger came out a couple of days ago regarding a schism, a divide between USC and Michigan and the rest of the Big Ten. It's all over this capital investment deal that they're seeking for the conference. Most of you may have probably already heard about it. If not, go check out College Football Speak Around the Corner with Greg Flugar. He's covered it extensively over there. Once this show's over, you can go check it out and get the details. I will give you some of the details right here, though, and I will leave a link to Ross Dellenger's article as well in the description. But basically, just to give you the quick rundown of what this deal means and what it is, and then I'll talk about how it will potentially impact, if they're not able to reconcile their differences, well, how it might impact the Big 12 and, of course, the team I cover, West Virginia. But according to anonymous sources who talked to Ross Dellenger about this within the Big 10, it would be they're looking to land a 20-year, $2.4 billion. That's right. I said billion with a B. $2.4 billion deal with a California pension fund called UC Investments. Now, this would basically require three things to happen. It would start a for-profit entity that's an offset from the actual conference called Big Ten Enterprises. And this UC Investments would have 10% ownership stake in Big Ten Enterprises, according to Ross Dellenger's article. It would also require the Big Ten to extend their grant of rights agreement, which would hold all the teams in that league for 10 more years. So from 2036, which is the end of their current grant of rights, through 2046. Now, that's not impacting their media deal. It's just tying the schools to the conference. So they would be tied to the conference another 10 years. That would be required. Now, apparently, and by the way, it would also set up uneven revenue distribution in the league. The schools would make an average of $135 million from this deal. And it appears that Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State would get the highest amounts. They would get up to $190 million estimated, whereas all the other schools would get somewhere between $100 to $110 million. So it averages out to about $135. According to this article and the anonymous sources, that's one of the reasons USC is not happy with this deal. They are not happy that they would not be in the upper tier of the payouts. Right? Now, Michigan has been some of their board members at the University of Michigan have been openly against this move ever since it was publicized. They've even spoken out on social media about it. Michigan does not like the idea of getting in bed, so to speak, with a private equity firm or private capital firm, however you want to word it. They do not seem to like the idea of it. Maybe they feel like they're selling their soul, so to speak. Whatever the case may be, they don't like it. And apparently neither does USC, according to these sources. But the Big Ten, according to some of Ross Dellenger's sources, are looking to move on or move forward with this deal, potentially even without those two universities part of it. Now, it would probably affect the value of the deal, but it doesn't necessarily mean it would kill the deal. But if Michigan and USC don't get on board and they proceed with it anyway, that means that Michigan and USC would not take part in the revenue, the one-time upfront payout of over $100 million. They would not get that, and they also would not be committed to the league past 2036. That's shocking to me, especially for Michigan, who's been in the league since I think they were one of the original founders of the conference. They're the arch rival to Ohio State, the two teams who make up the largest rivalry, potentially largest rivalry in all of sports. They wouldn't be in the same conference together anymore. That would be astonishing. Now, you let me know in the comments if you think this is actually feasible or not. Could Michigan and USC actually leave the Big Ten over this deal? Could they actually get left out of the Big Ten over this deal? Maybe not. Maybe this is someone leaking information for an agenda. I'm sure that's the case, but you let me know how feasible you think this is. And if they do, what would happen? Where would they go? And this is where I get into talking about how it could potentially impact the Big 12. But before I give you that information, before we talk about what would happen if they do leave, where they would go, and how it could impact the Big 12, let's do a quick ad read, and I'll be back in about a minute and a half. Let's give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors.
One play can change a season. One upset can silence a stadium. With every snap, the stakes get higher, and no one brings you closer to the action than DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook for live betting. From live betting to odds, boosts, and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to stay in the action from kickoff to the final whistle. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. Own every Saturday with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code COOS. That's code COOS to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
All right, thank you for letting me get through the housekeeping and help pay the bills. And thanks to DraftKings for supporting our work here on the show. And thanks to our partners over at Rogue Sports Network. Now, let's go ahead and talk about why or how or what options, rather, would Michigan and USC have if this whole thing collapses and they end up choosing to leave the Big Ten. Now, there are all kinds of rumors floating around. There's a rumor floating around that they could go independent, that Michigan and USC could choose to go independent. And listen, in most cases, I would say that's not feasible, right? Because it would be too hard to make your own schedule. It would be harder to get into the college football playoff. But for the case of Michigan and USC, because they're such big brands, I think they could actually pull it off. Now, they would need a home for their Olympic sports, or the sports besides football, which I'll get to that in a minute. But going independent might potentially work for them. I don't think they would have an issue finding teams that want to play them each year, and I think they could afford to pull it off. And I'm sure they could probably get some sort of media deal with somebody out there, whether it be TNT, whether it be, NBC. Someone would be willing to give Michigan and USC or USC their own media deal. And heck, maybe Michigan and USC could even team up together to get a media deal somehow, some way. I don't know. I'm sure there would be options out there. Or maybe they do some kind of their own some sort of private deal. I don't know. I'm sure there are options on the table that they have explored. But if they don't want to do a private capital deal or a private investment deal with the Big Ten, I don't think Michigan would want to do one on their own either. So that's probably out the window, but I'm just throwing out ideas here. But one of the options, if they do decide to go independent, would be to potentially put their other sports in the ACC. Now, they would align well with the ACC, in my opinion. And I'm actually of the opinion that why do they not just put their football in the ACC too? You align well with the ACC from an academic standpoint. You've got all these highly prestigious academic schools like UVA and UNC, at least for now. Stanford now, Cal, which is another thing. USC would be back in the league with Cal and Stanford again. That would help with travel. So, to me, the ACC is actually something these two schools should and or would consider if this deal happens to fall apart with the Big Ten. And they're not able to get this thing stopped, this private investment deal stopped. and they choose not to be a part of it. Could they go to the ACC? If they do, that would be terrible news for the Big 12, and here's why. If they join the ACC, it may strengthen, number one, it would strengthen the ACC. So the next time they're up to get a media deal, they would get paid a whole lot more money if you have teams like Michigan and USC in your conference. It would also prevent, there's been a lot of talk that, hey, if the ACC, if Clemson and Florida State, leave the ACC, which a lot of people still think they might, doing something like this might prevent them from leaving. And even if they do leave, the ACC would still be able to survive because they would still have some marquee brands left in the conference. Some good football brands like Michigan and USC, which means it would be much less likely that the Big 12 is able to pick off a couple ACC schools like Louisville or NC State or whoever. That would be much less likely to happen if Michigan and or USC join the ACC, even if they only do it in all sports other than football. You're still strengthening that conference by having those two marquee brands tied to your league. And another thing, both of those schools are rivals with Notre Dame. You don't think Notre Dame would love to have Michigan and USC in the ACC with them? That would be awesome for Notre Dame. They could potentially even keep their independence in football. And and it's my opinion, and this is just me thinking out loud. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm doing everything I can to get those two schools. If they choose to leave the Big Ten, I would be doing everything I can to get those two schools in the ACC versus going independent, because if they're independent, just like you, now they're fighting you for TV ads, for TV space, for TV deals, right? Notre Dame would not want that extra competition. Michigan and USC could potentially get just as good, or at least close to a similar deal that Notre Dame has with NBC, you would think. And I don't think Notre Dame wants to compete with them for that space. At least I wouldn't think so. It would also make getting, one of the downsides, for them being independent, it might be hard to get in the college football playoff. They would have to get an at-large bid. You wouldn't be able to get in by winning your conference. Another reason Notre Dame likely wouldn't want them as an independent, because they have rules written in specifically for independents, which, let's all face it, is there to cover Notre Dame's rear end, just in case they have a good season and they're ranked in the top 12, soon to be probably top 16. There are in the format of the CFP, it says, hey, any independent ranked in the top 12 automatically gets a bid. That's to cover Notre Dame. We all know that. Well, if Michigan and USC also go independent, guess what? Now they're competing with Notre Dame for a playoff spot, for that independent at-large playoff spot. So, Notre Dame's not going to want that. So I would imagine they would likely want those two schools in the ACC, whether it's for football, all sports, or even if it's without football. But primarily, I would think they would try to get them in as full-blown members so that they don't have to compete with them for, TV network space and for college football playoff space. But you let me know what you think in the comments. Here's another option that might be on the table for Michigan and USC. And I know what some of you might be thinking, because most of you watching this are probably fans of a Big 12 team. You're probably thinking, Coos, they could join the Big 12. I would love that, but there is no way in this world, in my opinion, that USC or Notre Dame would have ever joined the Big 12. I know that sounds bad, and I'm not saying that because I don't like the Big 12 or I think it's bad. I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective. They would look at that as a downgrade, a major downgrade. To be honest, they would probably look at any conference as a downgrade. But nonetheless, I doubt they would be willing to join the Big 12, especially Michigan. USC's been in the league with Utah and Colorado, Arizona State before. They might be, at least willing to have the conversation. I don't think Michigan would. I just think Michigan feels like they're above the Big 12, especially when it comes to the academic side. I don't think they would ever want to join the Big 12. So I don't think that would even be an option. I think they would go independent before they join the Big 12, just to be honest. Now, So what would that other option be? Well, I'll tell you. I've talked on this show before about the rumors that a whole separate conference could form. We've heard about some of the ACC schools talking behind the scenes about maybe getting out of that league and forming their own brand new conference, along with potentially some schools out of the Big 12. Well, what if Michigan and USC do that as well? What if Michigan and USC join forces with Clemson, Florida State, and some other big brands, potentially from the ACC and heck, maybe even the Big 12, and decide, you know what, we're going to form our own separate conference. Get out of the crap that is the ACC if you're Florida State and Clemson. If you're Michigan and USC, we don't want to deal with this private investment deal that the Big Ten is doing. So we're going to partner with you all. We'll form our own league. Now let's go get the top brands out of the ACC and the top brands out of the Big 12. Let's form our own 8 to 12 to 16 team league, whatever it ends up being. That league would be super competitive on the field, on the court, and especially, in my opinion, in the eyes of television networks and television executives. You don't think you'd like to have a league with Michigan, USC, Florida State, Clemson as your 4 top dogs in it? That'd be a pretty attractive conference to a TV executive, wouldn't you think? And if that happens, the Big 12 would fall another rung down. And heck, even if they join the ACC, it would far and away put the ACC ahead of the Big 12 from a public perception perspective and probably future TV deal perspective as well. So in my opinion, it's best for the Big 12 for Michigan and USC to stay in the Big 10. But here's best case scenario for them. The deal doesn't happen because if the Big 10 lands this deal and gets that extra $100 million per team plus of extra cash flow to help their programs, it's going to make it even tougher to compete with them for players in recruiting, for quality coaches, and everything else. We do not need the richest conference getting richer. It's not good for anyone, especially the Big 12, who right now is at the bottom in overall revenue, at least right there, somewhere close to the ACC. I think the Big 12 is slightly below the ACC right now, but it's very, very close. Either way, you do not want the Big 10 pulling even further ahead of everyone else. So either way, best case scenario for the Big 12 is for this deal not to happen, and for USC and Michigan to stay in the league and somehow be able to stop this deal from happening. And that way everything stays as is. That would be best case scenario. And for the Big 12 to be able to go out and do their own private investment deal somehow, some way, to try to get ahead of the curve a little bit. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario to me, the deal goes through, so the Big 10 pulls ahead of everybody else even more. USC and Michigan leave, go to the ACC, or form a whole new league that doesn't include my team, the West Virginia Mountaineers. That would be bad for the Big 12 and bad for the Mountaineers if that happens. But you let me know what you think in the comments section. Do you think there's a high likelihood that this deal gets done in the Big 10? And if it does, do you think USC and Michigan are a part of it? Because they do have something I forgot to mention. There is a 3 to 6 month grace period. If they sign the deal, move forward with it, they're going to give Michigan and USC 3 to 6 months. At least that's what's being proposed anyway. It's not a done deal yet, but a proposed 3 to 6 month grace period for them to change their mind, basically, and join the deal. So, but you let me know what you think, and you let me know if it does happen, what would it mean for the Big 12? What would it mean specifically for the team I cover here, the West Virginia Mountaineers? I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I have not done a video like this that's somehow related to conference realignment in quite some time. And I know some of you started following my channel because of those types of videos. So I felt like I should probably give you my thoughts on this because I think it could potentially have ramifications throughout college football, throughout college sports as a whole, and even down to affecting the Big 12 and WVU. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Want to give a shout out right now to my VIP channel members of the day. The random shout outs go to Kevin Varney, who's a brand new channel member here. Bill G., Brandon Bailey, Tom Reinhart, Houston Cougars, Germany. Thank you all. And Kevin, I want to give you a shout out for joining the channel, for becoming a new VIP member. You get a round of applause. Also want to remind you that you can hype this video. There's if you're watching on a mobile device, there's a button below called hype. At least there could be. Not sure if you see it or not. But if it'll be between download and the heart with a $sign in it. You can hit that button. It'll hype this video up. It shows YouTube that you liked it, and it helps get my content out to more and more people. You can become one of VIP channel members, paid members, by hitting the join button below or the join button over at my channel homepage. The perks and what comes with it are explained. Once you hit the button, it walks you through the process. Very simple. And for those of you who may want to subscribe and don't really know how, it is free. There should be a button below that says subscribe. It'll either be white, it may be red. All you have to do is press it with your finger, with your remote if you're watching on television, or if maybe your mouse clicker, whatever, if you're watching on a computer. Click that. It's free. It will make sure my videos show on your YouTube homepage when you open YouTube. You can also hit your notification bell to make sure my videos to make sure you get reminders of my future videos and future live streams I may do. I want to thank you for joining the show. If you're listening on podcast platforms, please follow me, Couz's Corner, and please give me a 5-star review. Watching on YouTube, do all the things I asked you to do, please, including the comments. I appreciate it. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless you. And as always, I like to remind you to keep country roads.